a sunny and beautiful Thursday morning in Northeast Ohio. We know Sophie Cunningham doesn't want to be here, but we all do. And screw her. Not literally, but Sophie Cunningham, you're a dope. I mean, we've already known you're a dope. You're an overrated basketball player. I don't know. I don't even know. But anyway, she's a dope. And by the way, Cincinnati and Cleveland are different places, you idiot. But we'll move on from that. Coming up later, the Cleveland Browns are officially moving to Brook Park. I don't know why I'm kind of singing that. We'll talk about that later. And could LeBron James return to the Cavaliers for one more run? That's all coming up. But we begin here in the bullpen, brought to you by Bet Rivers. Make sure you're using the Bet Rivers app. And I'll be on today on Betting Weekly Hardball, so check me out. And I'll be on tomorrow on the 4th of July. We'll do Betting Weekly Hardball at 2 p.m. as well. But for now, we're talking some hardball. The Cleveland Guardians lost yet again yesterday, falling to the Cubs by a final of 5-4. The Guardians have now lost 6 in a row. They're a season worst 4 games under 500 at 40-44. They are tied with the Twins, 12 and a half games back of the Tigers in a division that's over. Massive lead. In fact, they're only a half game more ahead of the White Sox than they are being close to the Tigers. So they're 12 and a half back of the Tigers and 13 games ahead of the White Sox. That's how bad it is. The Guardians' negative 51 run differential is the 4th worst in the American League, only better than the Athletics, the White Sox, and the Orioles. It's been a miserable season for the Guardians pretty much across the board. The bullpen's been fine, not elite like last year. The rotation's been fine. It's been okay. The defense has been subpar. And the offense is just hideous. They have scored 309 runs. That is the 3rd worst in the American League. The White Sox have the Royals actually are the worst at 287. Hard to believe that they're even worse than the Guardians. And they've played 3 more games than the Guardians. And the White Sox have scored 292 runs, and then comes the Guardians at 309. Let's see. In the National League, is there anybody that scored less? Yes, the Rockies. The woeful Rockies have scored 303. And they've played 86 games, so they've played more games. So the Guardians are 4th from the bottom in terms of runs scored. I'll say 5th, to be fair, because the Pirates have scored 1 more run than the Guardians, but the Pirates have played more games. So you're talking about the 5th worst team in terms of runs per game in the majors. It's bad, folks. And I was going to say there's no hope in sight. I mean, there is some hope down in the minor leagues, but now that the broadcast team and the manager and the front office executives of the Guardians have told us that the minor league numbers don't matter. There's a bigger differential than there's ever been before. And that guys are going to come up and they're all going to stink. Then what's the point? I guess there's no point. We might as well just leave Chase DeLauder and C.J. Kafis and those guys in the minors, for the rest of the season. Why bother, right? Let's just leave them in the minors. The season's lost. They can't help. Nobody can help. And listen, there is some truth in those statements and my sarcasm. I do think the gap between the majors and AAA is bigger than it's been, maybe ever, certainly in a long time. Part of that is guys are moving quicker through the system, especially most teams, not necessarily the Guardians, but for a lot of other teams. Guys are getting to the majors quicker. Teams used to have 6 or 7 minor league teams. Now they have 4. You used to have 200 players in your organization. Now you have, 120, 140. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's significantly less. It's at least 25% less, if not more, than it was pre-COVID. And so, yeah, just because a guy is dominating AAA certainly does not mean he's going to be great in the majors. Brian Rocchio just came back to the big leagues, and he was playing great in the minors. Big Christmas is doing well in Columbus after being, one of the worst players in baseball in the majors this year. We've seen it time and time again. A lot of the top prospects that have come up this year have struggled. Jack Caglione, who was drafted in the same top 10 last year as Travis Pizzana, has struggled. Chase Burns of the Cincinnati Reds hasn't pitched much yet, but he's struggled. He got bombed his last start. Matt Shaw of the Cubs, he's already been, up, down, and now back up. He's been better his second time around, but he's still not playing great. The Cubs' top prospect. So, yeah, there are a lot of guys who are struggling, and there are a lot of guys who come up to the majors and have to go back down. But that's part of the process. And it doesn't mean that everybody that the Guardians bring up will fail. I mean, it seems that way. Because they have. So even if Kafis and DeLauder come up, I don't know that they're going to be any good in the majors. Certainly not the first time around. And I don't think to expect either one to be a savior is unrealistic. But these guys are top prospects in the organization, especially DeLauder. They've performed as well as they can in the minors, especially Kafis, who's been healthy the whole season. And it seems to me and to many fans that both these guys have earned an opportunity. I think, and DeLauder obviously is, considered the better prospect. Not that necessarily the better prospect always pans out. We've seen it time and time again. But there's zero doubt that C.J. Kafis has earned an opportunity. He has played all season long. He's played 70 games between Akron and Columbus. Mostly at Columbus. At this point, he's played 52 games at Columbus. On the season, he's got 12 homers, 47 ribbies, a 979 OPS, a 313 batting average, a 408 on base percentage, 571 slugging. I give you number after number. They're all really good. And, he's 23 years old. And so he's young for AAA. But he's now been in the system for 3 years. He has an OPS of 937 in 195 minor league games, 862 trips to the plate, which is, a season and change, 33 homers, 158 ribbies. His strikeout to walk is, for a slugger is pretty good. Could he come up and struggle? Absolutely. Is he going to be the savior to this lineup? Probably not, at least not initially. Might he never even be a good player in the majors? Certainly possible. I just can't look at this Guardians team when they have absolute zeros. It's not like it's not like you can say this guy, Carlos Santana is doing okay, right? He's had a couple of decent games recently. You can say, okay, well, Santana's doing okay. He's serviceable. But everybody else, besides the obvious Ramirez, Kwan, and I would throw Manzardo in there, everybody else has done nothing. Everybody else on the roster is producing at a below average level. In fact, Carlos Santana's fourth on the team with a 708 OPS. So think about this. The average OPS in the majors is 711. The average. So if you're between like 7 and 720, your average production. The Guardians only have 3 guys above that number, and even Manzardo and Kwan are not that far above that. So Jose's got an 850 OPS, which is excellent. Stephen Kwan, 767, solid. Manzardo, 744, solid, especially for a guy in his first full year in the big leagues. And then you have Carlos Santana at 708, which is just below average. Same for Schneemann. Gabriel Arias at 661. That's not good. And then it just gets disastrous after that. And you have guys getting a lot of at-bats. Nolan Jones, almost 200 trips to the plate. And I've always been a big fan of Nolan Jones. But what is he doing that warrants regular playing time? Nothing. Same for Angel Martinez. Lane Thomas has been a little better lately. But overall for the season, 119 at-bats. He's got a 543 OPS. I know he had a home run yesterday. He's had a few in the last week. David Fry hit one yesterday, but he's been terrible. Austin Hedges, I've said for years, is the worst hitter in all of baseball. I'm not exaggerating. He's got a 451 OPS. I think Aaron Judge has a better on-base percentage than Austin Hedges. Maybe not, but close. Rocchio, 432. You can't win. You can live with one or two guys below average. You can't have 6 or 5, and including some that are significantly below average. So okay, you look at the roster and you say, well, if I give up on Nolan Jones, I got to move. He doesn't have options. I can't send him to the minors. Well, okay, but I could send David Fry to the minors. I could send Jonathan Rodriguez to the minors. I could send Angel Martinez to the minors. I could send Rocchio back. I could send Bo Naylor to the minors. They don't really have a catching solution, so I could send Schneemann, and he's been okay. But he's come back to reality here. I got plenty of guys. And as for adding, a guy to the 40-man roster, that I don't know why that would be a problem. There's guys you could move on from off this 40-man roster, and you could at least temporarily put Paul Sewald on the 60-day injured list. That would open up one spot. And right now the Guardians are at the full 40, but it's just frustrating because it feels like the Guardians are not coming off what was a really awesome season last year. It feels like they're not trying to win. And obviously, Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff, they want to win. They're good baseball men. They really are. And I have never even thought about saying they should be fired. And I've been covering this team since 2011. And I've always thought highly of those guys, and I still do. But their time here may need to come to an end. If they can't, and it's easy. Well, Bull, how do you say right the ship? They just were in the playoffs last year. Well, just because the team overachieved and the front office got lucky despite their mistakes doesn't mean they've done a good job. They haven't. This organization cannot develop hitters. They have spent money. They have not spent enough money. That's on ownership. But when they have spent it, it's been spent poorly. That's on the front office. They sat on their hands, didn't trade prospects when they could to get proven players, and those prospects now, for the most part, have no trade value or little trade value, or at the very least, have significantly less trade value. Speaking of trades, I asked the question, should Emmanuel Clase get traded? Most of you say yes. In the poll, you see the poll there, 79% of you have said yes. So I think the Guardians are not going to the playoffs this year. Happy to eat my words if I'm wrong, along with a couple of cheeseburgers. But they're not going to the playoffs. So this season's over. So what I would do if I'm the Guardians, the trade deadline is in 4 weeks. To me, I would 100% trade Emmanuel Clase. And here's why. Because and that doesn't mean, I know somebody said to me on Twitter, well, I don't want to blow up the whole team. I want to try to compete next year. And I'm not saying blow up the whole team. I'm saying make a couple of strategic trades that hopefully will make the Guardians better next year and in the future, but certainly for next year too. The strength of the Guardians is their bullpen. Obviously, there's no doubt about that. Clase got off to a bad start, but for the most part, he's pitched very well since. All their relievers have not been as good this year. We saw Tim Herron struggle a little bit yesterday. Hunter Gaddis has allowed a lot more base runners this year than he did last year. Even Cade Smith hasn't been quite as good. However, and that's to be expected, you know, relief pitchers, it's hard. Consistency from a relief pitcher is very hard from year to year, even game to game. But overall, the Guardians' bullpen is a strength. Cade Smith's going to be here for a while. Hunter Gaddis is going to be here for a while. Tim Herron's going to be here for a while. Eric Sabrowski, Andrew Walters. You have a lot of good arms in that Guardian pen. And you have players, in my opinion, that are capable of taking over the closer role, including Smith and Gaddis, I think. So you have Emmanuel Clase, and he has not only been, and obviously he hasn't been the best closer in baseball this year, but he's still been very good since the shaky start, right? Overall, for the last few years, he's been the best in baseball. He's young, just turned 27 at the start of the season. His contract is extremely team-friendly. He is making, if you can believe this, $4.9 million this year. He'll make $6.4 million next year. And then in 27 and 28, there's team options for $10 million each year. And if they decided not to pick it up, he'd get $2 million. So those are options that, unless he completely craters in the next 2 years, will both be picked up. So essentially, whatever team trades for him will get him for 4 years, or at least 4 years of control, and they'll pay him less than $30 million because the $4.9 million this year is at least half paid. So you're talking about $29 million for 4 playoff runs for Emmanuel Clase. That's very valuable to another team. And you say, Bull, you just said you want to win next year. Why would you trade the guy who's been one of the best closers in baseball when you could have him for the next 4 years at a reasonable price? It's a good question, right? I think when we live in the reality of what the Guardians organization is, as much as I hate it, as much as I rail against it, as much as I scream and yell that they need to spend more, they're not going to. That's just it. And I want the Guardians to win and be successful. And to ultimately win a World Series, it's going to be very hard to do at the payroll level they're at. It's very hard to do, period, let alone at their payroll level. Is it possible? Yes, but they've got to be perfect. They've got to thread that needle perfectly. And I think Emmanuel Clase, for a team that's unwilling to spend, is a luxury. And because they have blown it so many times when it comes to hitters, and who knows, they could trade Emmanuel Clase for 3 top hitting prospects and they could all suck. But I think you could turn Emmanuel Clase into guys that are absolutely ready to play in the big leagues. I really think you got to trade for at least one player that's already had some level of success in the major leagues. That's not easy to do because you're going to trade him to a team that's going to try to win the World Series this year. And teams like that don't usually want to trade proven players. However, if you traded him to a team that's very deep offensively, and unlike the Guardians, there are teams like that, and there's guys who, are not playing regularly because the team's too deep or don't have an opportunity because the team's too deep. And there are guys you can find, but certainly at the very least, finding guys that are top prospects that are ready to play in the majors. Will the Guardians actually put them on the big league roster? Who the hell knows? But it's time to cash in. The Guardians have sat in their hands too long and done nothing. In the last few years, they have not traded top prospects. It's bit them. They've spent money on free agents poorly. They've gotten it wrong way more than they've gotten it right in the last few years. They got to get this right, and I think getting this month right includes trading Clase for at least 2 hitters that pan out, and what a difference that can make. Again, there's no guarantees, but there's also no guarantee Emmanuel Clase is going to continue to be a great closer. There's not that many closers that are good for that long. It's uncommon. The Mariano Riveras of the world don't happen very often. We've seen closers as great as Emmanuel Clase completely go off the rails in a year or two. We've seen it time and time again. Eric Gagne won an MVP, I think, or at least a Cy Young, and then completely went off a cliff. And I'll tell you one other trade, and I don't know if this is going to be possible, but one other thing I think the Guardians at this point should do, clearly, if they don't make it to the playoffs, they wasted money signing Shane Bieber. I didn't like the signing at the time, but I figured if the Guardians were in the playoffs, it could pan out, but I didn't like it. Now, if the Guardians are sellers, then signing Shane Bieber was a total waste. Except if, it's a big if, big if. If he is able to pitch at least once, hopefully twice, I don't know. Probably not likely. Before the trade deadline, the Guardians might be able to turn Shane Bieber into something of value. That's a big if, because I don't know that he's going to be able to pitch. Remember, the deadline's the 31st. And, Bieber's been out for, since the, third start of last year, whatever it was. But obviously, if he came back even for one start and looked like the Shane Bieber of old, which I would expect, somebody would give you a good deal for him. I believe that, because he's a difference maker in the postseason. And so keep that in mind. And Shane Bieber, I know he's signed for next year. There's a player option. If he's healthy at the end of the year, he's opting out. So it's not like the Guardians were not going to have him for next year unless he got hurt again, and then you wouldn't want him. So the possibility of Bieber coming back before the deadline and then being traded could turn out to be a nice trade chip for the Guardians. I know nobody wants to hear this, and that, just past the halfway point of the season, it sucks to kind of give up on the season, but that's where we're at. And I think the only hope going forward for the Guardians, with a Tigers team that looks fantastic and a Royals team that's like the Guardians having a bad year, but like the Guardians, I expect some level of bounce back next year. The Twins are always in the mix. You got to be better. And I think trading Emmanuel Clase and potentially trading Shane Bieber could go a long way to helping them get some much-needed ammunition on the offensive end. But they've got to get it right. And in the past, I would have believed that the Guardians front office would get a trade like that right. Now I'm not as confident. A few years ago, we were loving the Lindor trade. I don't love it anymore. Let me get some comments from you folks. Jim says, when you're as bad as the Guardians are, it's totally irrelevant who pitches the ninth inning. I'm all in for a trade. Yeah, that's true for this year. It's not true going forward, for the next 4 years, because you'd have them for, 3 more years of control. But so it is relevant, because I don't think the Guardians are going to suck year after year. They never do. And that's why it's not a no-brainer, but I think ultimately you do it. Sam says, gives me the bull emojis. Thank you, Sam. It says, Jose is as cold as he's ever been. Slash line 190, 242, 259 over his last 15. When your offense is already well below average and one of the two bright spots is that cold, makes for terrible baseball. I mean, it's a miracle he's played as well as he has. I don't know why you would ever pitch to Jose Ramirez. Last night in the Yankees-Blue Jays game, it's a wild game. The Blue Jays had an 8-0 lead or 7. They scored 7 in the first. I think they were up 8-0. And then they were up 9-7 in the eighth, and they pitched to Aaron Judge. And I'm like, and the Yankees lineup isn't close to as bad as the Guardians, but Aaron Judge is, so much better than everybody else in the Yankee lineup. I'm like, what are they doing? Why would you pitch to Aaron Judge in a big spot? It was crazy. And, of course, Judge hit a home run, tied the game. Blue Jays ended up winning 11-9 after blowing that big lead. But, and again, even more so, I don't know why you would ever pitch to Jose Ramirez. Let's put it this way. Last night, if you were watching the Cubs and Guardians last night, the Guardians were down 5-3 in the ninth. They get a base runner. Martinez reaches on an error. They end up scoring a run, sacrifice fly to Quantum. By the way, I got a pet peeve from last night's game. I'm watching it on ESPN, and Boog Shambi was calling the game. And Boog's a very good play-by-play guy. He's one of the best in the business. But the score was 5-3. The Guardians had second and third, one out. And Stephen Kwan hit a fly ball to the left. There was a sacrifice fly. The runner on third scored. The runner on second stayed at second. It was the second out. And Boog Shambi said, Stephen Kwan gets the job done. No, he didn't. I don't mean to kill Stephen Kwan. He's one of the only guys I have no criticism for. But he didn't get the job done. Knocking in that fourth run is meaningless. If you're down 5-3 and it's second and third, 2 outs in the ninth inning, you didn't get the job done with a sacrifice fly. You didn't. Whether the score was 5-3 with runners at second and third or 5-4 with just a runner on second is no difference. Unless that runner on second scores, it doesn't matter. I know some people are going to be confused by this, but it's irrelevant. If it was the eighth inning, the seventh, any other inning, then he got the job done, but not in the ninth. Boog, you got to be better than that. But anyway, with 2 outs, Kyle Manzardo's up now, runner on second, 5-4. And Jose Ramirez is on deck. And I believe it ended up being a 3-2 count on Manzardo, and he got him, he flew out center field to end it. But I was thinking, watching the game, that, so again, it's 5-4, runner on second. 2 outs. Let's say Kyle Manzardo had walked there. That would have brought up Jose Ramirez. And it would have been first and second, 2 outs. And the tying run would have been on second. And Carlos Santana behind Jose Ramirez. And Carlos had a good game yesterday. He hit a home run, had 2 hits. As crazy and unorthodox as it is, I would have seriously considered walking Jose Ramirez and moving the winning run into scoring position to just not face him. I probably would have talked myself out of that ultimately, but I don't know. That's how much better Jose Ramirez is than the rest of the lineup, and that's even with him in a slump. So part of the reason he's probably in a slump is because nobody's pitching to him in a big spot. And why would you? Ever. Jim says, I'd take the organization more seriously if I didn't think they were trying to win the wins per dollar award every year. That is a little annoying, and some fans give them credit for that, and that pisses me off. Victor says, hard for Jose to be motivated to produce when surrounded by stiffs. Now, Jose has no problem being motivated. That is not an issue here. He's in a slump. I mean, that's going to happen. It's not about motivation. Diesel, the guard situation is embarrassing because they are realistically close to being a true contender, squandered opportunities, and wasting people's careers out there, not watching for the rest of the year. That's not unfair, Diesel. Past results do not predict future results. The front office is skating based on trades of the past while letting the current team wither away. That's how I feel. And I'm only willing to give them another year, and maybe I shouldn't, but not that I can get them fired, but I'm only willing to say another year before, for the first time in all this time, I call for a front office firing for the Guardians because of their track record. And maybe that is wrong. Let's see. Sam says, trade for your depth to strengthen your weakness. Yes. Andy says he's an elite closer making $4 million per year. He's not making $4 million per year. He's making more than that, but he's not making a lot. Christopher Myers, best of luck with your upcoming surgery, Bull. I'm not having surgery just yet. I have decided to have bariatric surgery. I've just taken the first steps. I met with the doctor yesterday. Probably won't be till the winter till I actually have the surgery. Diesel, what difference has Bieber ever made in the playoffs? Bieber was terrible yesterday. Bieber, what a disappointment he's been this season. Both him and Gavin Williams. Not Bieber, sorry. Tanner Bybee, I meant, has been a huge. I mean, Tanner Bybee's, after last night's ERA's up to 4.20. He's been lousy. He's a mediocre pitcher right now, at best. And what's funny yesterday is that he gets off to a good start. Walked the batter in the first inning. Walked and hit a batter. He not allowed any hits in the first 2 innings. There were 3 base runners. But then in the third inning, and I know the Cubs have a good lineup. Give them some credit. Walk, single, double, single. And then it was 3-2. The Cubs had the time running third with nobody out. He got out of it. Struck out Swanson, Bush, and Kelly to get out of it. And you're like, okay, here we go. And then the Guardians went 1-2-3. And then in the fourth, he gets the first out, gives up an infield single, a walk, gets the fielder's choice, so he's a chance to get out of it again. First and third, 2 outs. And Suzuki and Pete Crow Armstrong come through. And that was an exciting play with Crow Armstrong, the triple. And they end up scoring 3 runs there. And again, you give the hitters credit. Suzuki and Crow Armstrong are both having, all-star seasons. Pete Crow Armstrong's having an MVP season. But, you got to make some pitches, and he did in the third. He couldn't in the fourth, and he fell apart. Yeah, Andy, I understand what his contract is, but going forward, he's not getting $4 million a year. He gets I just gave you his contract numbers going forward. Doesn't matter what it was at the time he signed. He's making $5 million this year, 6.4 next year, and then there's 2 $10 million options. So going forward, he's not going to make $4 million a year. What he made already, it doesn't matter. Victor says, Bull, do you think Tito would have done any better with this Guardians lineup this year? No, I don't think so. All right, folks, we're going to leave it there. I was going to get to some other things, but I was just so passionate about the Guardians today that's all I had time for. We'll talk about the LeBron. Let me talk about LeBron for a minute. I hope, you know what? I'm seeing all kinds of rumors. LeBron wants out of L.A. Bring him back. I don't want to hear this crap about, I want to win one without LeBron. I just want the Cavs to win another championship. And go get LeBron, whatever it takes. Let's go. Bring him back. One more swan song, third run. Get this bullshit winning without him. You can't win without him. What have they done without him? Nothing. Bring LeBron back. Talk about the stadium stuff another time. Thanks to Z and Alex for producing. I'll talk to you next time. Where else but right here in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. See you, everybody.